Episode 28 of the podcast. In the first part, we're going to talk about, is it an observation or your intuition? What's the difference? And then the second part, what we're going to talk about is the modern dog owner and what kind of services they're actually looking for their dogs. This is the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, and a certified professional dog trainer. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. There was a time in my career when I would have said, I have a feeling this dog is going to, or I just knew that he was going to go for me. And so I still feel that way sometimes. There are definitely times where I just kind of go, wow, okay, I caught on to something. I recognized it before it was going to happen, kind of a gut feeling. But as time goes on, I noticed that what I was seeing was behavior. So I'm seeing facial expressions. I'm feeling the body stiffen. I'm noticing the weight shift. I'm listening to the things that the dog hears and preparing for them to react to it. I'm watching our surroundings and observing things that dogs may respond to and preparing for them to respond. So I'm experienced now, and I realize that I have this full library in my mind of these various situations that can play out and a variety of responses that I've observed. So it wasn't really intuition, and it wasn't really a feeling as much as it was observing. But I hadn't yet learned what I was observing. So there was something really happening, and I was picking up on cues that I didn't know the names of and didn't know what to look for. So I want you to be thinking about times when you notice something and say, hey, did I observe it? Or was it a gut instinct? Right? Was it my brain or my gut? A thought or a reflex? An observation or intuition? Because I really want you to have both. I think it's important to have that gut response too. That intuitive, I'm just going to take action on this right now without having to think about it. Because there are definitely times that is the safest response. Like, go with what you know. But, and actually, that's the one that takes a lot of hands-on to learn. It takes a lot of hands-on to have that gut response, that intuitive kind of, I need to respond to this without really thinking about it. It takes a lot of hands-on and a lot of experience. But I think it's also very, very important for us to be able to recognize what observations led us there. So, for instance, if a dog gives me a hard time, I know that's such a vague term. Let's come up with something better. If a dog shifts their weight, stiffens up, gives me a side eye that's very, very wide, and hackles go up, right? Like those are all indications that, okay, something bad's happening. Again, not very descriptive. Something bad's going to happen, right? My brain is noticing those things, but I don't have to think about, oh, that and plus that, plus that, plus that equals maybe I should, right? I want that instantaneous kind of, I know how to respond to this. And that comes with experience, comes with working with it. But I do need to be able to, even after that moment hits, like, if it's a matter of stepping away or, sliding my hand away from the area that I was working on or noticing who's at the door, I do need to be able to look back and say, these are the things that I saw. And the reason why is because the better we are at knowing what we observe, knowing what those signs are, then we have a better chance of experiencing those same responses in other animals. So, for instance, you may be very, very familiar with a handful of dogs, but then you meet a different dog. And that's actually pretty common, especially when we just begin to work with dogs. Maybe it's a breed that you're not familiar with, right? But you meet this other dog whose responses are similar, but not the same. To give you an example, like if you work with a lot of labs and a lot of Goldens, right? You get kind of used to their feel. And then you get a border collie on your grooming table. And their responses are just a little bit different. There's a different intensity level for a lot of them. Not necessarily the happy. They're a little bit more like their head's on a swivel. They're aware of everything that's going on. I say this as a border collie owner, um, and someone who also adores the labs and the goldens. But as a border collie owner, like their responses are different. But if you know to look for these kind of changes in their body language and in the feel and the sound and things that you can measure, things that you can hear, things you can feel, things you can observe with your eyes, things that anybody in the room could observe also, the data, not necessarily the story, but to be able to do that will help you with each dog you work with. And many of us come into dog fields, any of the dog fields, by being an animal lover first. And then we start learning our trade or our academic skills. And there's a variety of ways to do that. But as we start learning more and more and more, we need to also remember that each dog is an individual. When we learn to observe, then we can start really making some generalizations that can be helpful for us. Even though every dog is an individual, it helps us pick up the subtleties of a behavior. And those are really important because you know what? If you catch the moment a dog does a little lip lick, that could be the first sign of, I'm kind of uncomfortable. And I find in many cases, if I notice a very early sign and help them settle down again, and we've talked before about calming them down in your hands, right? The dog is not yet to a point where they won't accept that. Like calming them down in your hands is still possible. That they're also learning, oh, I really didn't need to crank it up. She's being aware of what I'm trying to communicate. Does that make sense? If a dog gives a subtle cue and we're onto it, they're far more likely to continue to use subtle cues and not necessarily go for the dramatic cues, right? Growling, lip curls, flailing. Those dramatic cues can turn into a full-on rodeo. But if we start picking up on the more subtle cues, we're also training ourselves to observe better and observe other animals better too. So as I talk about observing these animal cues, let's talk about observing us, right? I want you to think about, I'm going to give two human examples. One human example is when you were a kid, and I'm pretty sure everyone has experienced this at some point. Maybe you're at a big family gathering or whatever, and you look over, and maybe it's your mom or your dad, one of your parents is giving you the cool it eye, like the hey, settle down eye, right? And it's really hard to define what that eye looks like because it's just something that you live with and you can observe and you realize, Mom's telling me to cool it, to settle down a little bit, getting a little bit crazy, right? Maybe you don't because, you're a kid, but you know that look. And maybe your parents are just hanging out with the other adults and they're talking and that they're trying to not let on to any of the other adults that they just gave you the look. But that look, there's something very, very subtle. And when we start thinking about the subtleties in our own facial expressions, and the look that your mom gives, right? Or your dad gave you, that's very, very subtle. It's very hard to define. But if that were part of our job was to spot the looks that parents give, we'd learn how to define it, right? Some of the signals that dogs give us are very, very, very subtle. And I kind of like these nice subtle cues. I will encourage that all day instead of a dog that thinks that they need to really, really freak out to tell us they're not comfortable with something. I'm going to give you another example, another human example of those really subtle changes and subtle differences in body language. My husband used to work at the mall and he managed a couple of bookstores. It was Christmas time and I forget what our conversation had been, but he gave me a smile and I realized, did you just give me the have a good day, ma'am retail smile? Hey, I'm your wife. You don't do that, right? And we're laughing because he's like, you know what? I really kind of did. I just do it so often this time of year. Now, the smile wasn't insincere. It was just practiced, I guess would be the word. There's just something very subtly different about that smile versus the more I'm smiling at my wife smile. Right? And if I needed to be able to spot that, I would learn how to define that. But if not, it's really easy to say, I just had a feeling, but those aren't necessarily just a feeling. That's your brain seeing some body language. That's your brain hearing some sound. That's your brain feeling something in your hand, right? So instead of thinking about it as an intuitive hit, I want you this week, as your action step, your weekly action step, which hopefully you guys are doing because I'm doing them as we go. I think that it's just a way for us to build our skill set. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, cool, just do this one. I'm not making them in any certain order, just things to work on each week. But this week, I want you to be thinking about, if you have a feeling, think back to what exactly did you see or feel or hear or in some cases smell. All right, smell is going to be an interesting one. Let me talk about that for a second. So sometimes a dog's breath has a smell to it that it's a stress smell. I can't really describe what the difference is, and I wish I could describe it. But definitely there's a different smell when they start getting stressed out. I know, it's weird. But if you were aware of that, things are going to start being more obvious to you. And that's why it's important for us to think about, am I observing something? Was this my brain or a gut reaction? Is this a thought or a reflex? And I do want it to be reflexive. I do. I really want you to be able to, on a safety level, see something happening and respond accordingly without having to put it through the larger flow chart in your brain. Like, oh, I saw this and this and this and this, and oh no, he's already got a hold of my arm, right? I want you to think about those things later so that you can describe them. And in many cases, we need to be able to describe them to a coworker or to an owner, or an owner describing them to the person who does services with our animals. As an example, one of my guys, if I told them, you know what, he gets a little bit nervous and just talk him through it, I need to describe what nervous would look like for him, right? Because many people would see him just being really relaxed and still, but still and stiff is a warning. Still and stiff is not comfortable, right? Still and loose is totally exactly what we want most of the time. So I want you to think about what we observe, and I want you to know that it's really common for us to continue to learn this throughout our entire lives. Okay? I've been working with animals for a long time. I've had the advantage of working in a variety of fields and with a variety of species, but I still learn all the time. Every dog has something that they teach me. And every owner has something that they teach me. There's always some new nuance to learn. So if you're thinking about, well, I'm pretty good at this already, awesome, yay, let's keep working at it, right? So be thinking about it if you notice little things or you get a feeling that he needs a break. Yeah, take a moment this week and think, all right, I'm going to give him a break, but then reflect on it. What did I see that made me realize this dog needed a break? Like there was more than just a feeling. And it's okay to have a feeling. It's okay to have a gut response. But I want you to think, yeah, what did I catch on to? Because it's going to help you spot it with the next dog. It's going to help you spot it with more frequency. And it's going to just up your game. It's going to up your game like you wouldn't believe. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. An educated customer base is just a pleasure to work with. All right. So dogs who are trained and prepared for success are a joy to work on. Dogs who are being worked with and making progress will make your customers happy and you and your staff safe, or you and your coworkers, right? But I want you to be thinking about we're building the customers and clientele that we enjoy working with. This is already a tough field. Any of the animal fields are already hard work, physically demanding, right? So It's a win for everyone. We're pleasing our customers. We're making the dogs happy. We're making us happy. I want you to be thinking about like working closely with other pet professionals to achieve results is great for your business. It just is. I mean, it's going to be great for their business and for your business because when we refer back and forth, it just helps our customers. Our customers are going to be thrilled with that. As somebody who does refer back and forth to other local businesses, like, yeah, our customers are like, oh my God, I love her. And if you're like, yeah, she's great, you know? So when we work together, it allows us to overlap our efforts and we actually come to better results, right? For our dogs, for our customers, and for ourselves, because this business is hard. Whether it be training or grooming or vet visits, it's just hard. Now, I want you to think about the modern dog owner is often searching for services that will help their dog be comfortable and happy. A lot of them are willing to put in effort. They're willing to pay for professional help. They want to help their dog and they'll follow instructions as best they can. That's my experience with the modern dog owner, right? I mean, more so than in the past, right? They're buying boots for their dogs in winter because they don't want them to, get little burns from rock salt, right? They're doing things that we didn't do 20 years ago. They are really, really keen on their dogs, and they're a great, great group of people. We just need to be able to help them when they have a problem, and they're going to be wonderful customers for us. And that might not be every dog owner, but there's so many of them, and they're spending a lot of time and effort. Now, I do want to say many of those same people have given up because they've been told or led to believe that it's just the way your dog is, right? They're often living with some pretty serious problems at home, and sometimes they have dogs who are a danger to them, but their dedication to the dog is still there, right? So, imagine the people who come in and say, oh, you know what? I mean, he was just so traumatized when he came to us. We think he was abused. The rescue thinks he was abused. We're just never going to be able to get him to be comfortable with something. And many of them have given up because they have been told it's just the way this dog is. And sometimes we mistake those people for people who don't care anymore. And sometimes we mistake them for people who are just making excuses for their dog's behavior. But what we need to think about is that many of those people have tried a lot of stuff, but nothing has worked yet. And before they take any new advice, they want to know what your qualifications are and how they compare to people they've already worked with, right? They already have worked with somebody. They're already hearing advice from everywhere, right? They're not trying to one-up you or treat you like less than a professional, but they're burned out, right? These owners are suffering from compassion fatigue, just like we do. They've heard advice from every Tom, Dick, and Harry. They start to feel like the whole world is judging them as failures because their advice would work and these people aren't following their advice, blah, 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 right? Their neighbors, aunts, brother-in-laws, beagles, moms, niece was, they're coming up with all these stories. They hear it all the time. So what can we do to help them, right? I want you to think that that person is still probably the modern dog owner who's searching for services if that'll help their dog be comfortable. So one of the ways that we help them is that we have our safety policy. I know I beat you guys over the head with this, but to tell people ahead of time, we plan on keeping it all safe. We don't push dogs too far. We work on their dog's brain. And also, when we tell them before we even meet the dog that this is how we proceed, just present it as the average day. Yep, this is what we do. Your problem is actually fairly common. This is what we do. This is what has been successful for us and the dogs in our care. Don't worry, we're here to help. We do this every day. If we think you need more help than we can offer, we have colleagues that we can send you to for that help. We'll be kind to your dog while keeping everyone safe and building better behavior. Because a lot of these owners have been told some stories about how this is just the way your dog is. And I see it an awful lot. And sometimes I'm the one who is able to convince them that, yeah, don't let your dog live in fear. Let's work on this. That's common but not normal. All right. And what I mean by common but not normal is that there are some things that are normal, right? Is it normal for a dog to bark if they hear a noise? Yeah. Is it normal for a dog to bark, continue to bark, can't stop barking, pace whine, and carry on for 2 hours? I would say no. Common, It's a common problem, but not normal, right? But we can go ahead and tell them, hey, we're going to help you find a solution, or at least minimize the problem that you do have. Some of these dogs have some health issues, and we can work around health issues. So I want you to be thinking about the modern dog owner and how we can help them, and how that helps us build the clientele that we want to work with, right? We want to be able to work with nice people with well-behaved dogs, or dogs that are in the process of learning how to be good. And you know what? The stress level for us when we're teaching dogs to be good and we're keeping them sub-threshold, and groomers, what sub-threshold means is we're keeping them at the point where they can handle it without becoming dangerous, without becoming aggressive, without getting overworked up, without getting stressed out. Like we're keeping them at the point that they can handle. And that's what sub-threshold means. And those dogs, if you are working with a dog and you're keeping him sub-threshold, if you're keeping him relaxed and maybe don't finish it, but your owners are in on it and your owners know and you make progress every time, I want you to think about how much safer your workday is. For you, for your coworkers, for your staff, for your customers, and for your dogs. And for the other dogs in your care who aren't observing a meltdown, right? All the dogs are more relaxed because nobody's getting to a point of being overly stressed out, right? We can build the business that we want as well as serve our customers very, very well. Because, like I said, the modern dog owner is searching for services that will help their dog be comfortable and happy. Especially, people make fun of the mixed breed trend right now, but a lot of those people have spent a lot of money on a dog, and they are very, very dedicated to those dogs. We need to provide them with the information that they need. Things like how to brush your doodle, because that's far more complicated than just brushing out any other coat. Their coats are just notoriously more of a brush project, right? But build the clientele that you want, and don't worry as much about the people who are like, no, I just want you to pin him down and do his nails. I don't care if he screams, but the other dogs in your care if that dog screams. The other dogs in your care will notice that. Anybody walking past your place of business hearing dogs scream is going to give you a bad reputation or a bad name, even though it's not your fault, right? The world is stacked against us, right? They're going to be thinking, what are they doing to that poor dog, So if we're building this culture of, hey, we're here to help your dog, and this is how we're going to do it. And if we, as an industry, are all encouraging that, and they start hearing it everywhere, right? When I have owners find a vet who says, oh, the vet said exactly what you said, we're all like, oh, good. I know their vet was pleased too. Like, oh, that's exactly what my groomer said. I'll have to tell her you said the same thing, right? That it makes us all look like we're here to help, which we are. But for owners, that's a very calming effect for them. They're like, oh, this is great. Everybody feels like we have a way to help my dog, right? This is what they want. This is what they're buying. This is what they're putting their money into. They want us to be able to help them. So don't worry about if this is going to make you turn people away or how much you're charging. Just be honest with people about, I'm not going to stress your dog out because that is more harmful in the long run. The long-term goal is a dog who is comfortable, calm, and cooperative. I want to help you get there, and it's safer for all of us. And I think trainers and other dog pros don't necessarily realize that a bite to a groomer's hand, scissoring hand, could be career-ending. Like, what do I want to do with my life now? I can't continue to groom. Career-ending, right? Think about that, because not many other fields have something like that, right? Carpenters, I suppose, right? You injure your hammer hand and you're like, oh my God, right? But that fine scissoring that we do, if a dog injures your scissoring hand, you're left going, well, what am I going to do next? Can I stay working with dogs? What's my next project, right? The general population isn't really aware of that. There's a huge risk of getting hurt, and we shouldn't be getting hurt at work. That's really not an expectation that we should have to work with. And when I was a vet tech, very rarely did we get hurt at work, right? We had lots of safety procedures and we had enough staff, right? And we worked around whatever problem we were having. And sometimes that was a matter of just sedating an animal and then working on them. But we all need to be thinking about safety, right? And the long run, because our customers want their dogs to be happy and normal. Their customers want their dogs to be able to get a nail trim when they need it, trim around their eyes, give them ear medication if they need it, right? Look at their feet. So I know that was a lot of information, but I want you to be thinking about that. And don't forget about our action step this week. And everybody have a great week and stay curious. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video. I'm also happy to come to you if you're near my area in southern New Hampshire.